Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks, Beth, for the intro. As you said, I'm the senior solidity engineer for Rocketpool. My primary role with Rocketpool is to develop the smart contracts that power Rocketpool. Another part of what I do, though, is research and development of ideas that will help the protocol grow, and things like technical feasibility testing of ideas presented by the community and driving them from sort of idea to implementation and deployment. Today, I'm going to be talking about Megapools, as Pat said. Thank you. I've prepared a research page on our research repository a couple of months ago, and yeah, I'm just going to go over what that idea is. Actually, before I get started, I just want to clarify from Grant's slides, it made it seem like Megapools were coming in Houston, but it's actually not coming in Houston. It'll hopefully be in another upgrade such as Saturn. So before I get into exactly how Megapools, the idea works, I just want to quickly go over the current situation and what like the limitation and drawbacks of mini pools are specifically in the protocol. Anyone here running 2 or more mini pools will be acutely aware of some of the pain points that come out of the design. So I'm going to talk about why we picked that design in the first place and what Megapools is going to do in the future. So I'm not going to go into everything about Rocketpool. I just want to focus on the mini pools, and the points that are specifically related to what Megapools are going to help us fix. So most people probably know, but every single Rocketpool validator on our protocol has its own smart contract deployed. So if a single node operator has 100 validators, that's 100 separate smart contracts, 100 separate deployments, 100 separate distributions if you want to distribute your rewards. The reason it's done this way, I'll go over in a minute, but we basically need every validator to have its own unique withdrawal credentials. And I just want to also make this point about the ODAO because I come back to it a bit later. But currently, the ODAO checks to make sure that the withdrawal credentials are correct on every deposit. And that's a trusted duty performed by our protocol DAO called a scrub check. Okay, so you might be thinking that a single contract for every single validator is very inefficient and wasteful, and that's true. It was implemented this way simply out of necessity. There was no real better way to achieve the goals that we needed, because there's no way natively to differentiate between capital and rewards from the beacon chain. So, as I mentioned, it's very inefficient for these main reasons, 3 reasons. Contract creation, so every single validator requires a deployment of a smart contract onto the EVM. Again, multiple distribution transactions are required to distribute your gas, distribute your rewards, sorry. And if you're not opted into automatic updates on the delegate, it also requires a single transaction to every single vehicle to upgrade it. And we did improve it a little bit in a previous upgrade to use a dual proxy design to minimize the gas deployment, but at present day it still takes about 1.3 million gas to make a deposit and create a mini pool at this point. So I made that mention about the distinction between rewards and capital. So the reason why we can't sort of differentiate between the two is because on the beacon chains, just validators have a single balance. So it starts at the 32 ETH that you deposit, and then it grows as the rewards accrue. Both of those, whether it's capital or rewards, gets distributed to the validator's withdrawal credentials. The exception to that is the execution layer rewards, tipped in MEV, and that's it. So the problem is that if the mini pool has a balance of 16 ETH, how do we know whether that was 16 ETH worth of accrued rewards over several years, or whether that was the validator being slashed down to 16 ETH and forced out? So in order to distinguish between these, we kind of make this assumption: we treat any balance less than 8 ETH as rewards, and any balance equal to or greater than 8 ETH as potentially slash capital. That's between 8 and 32, you know, years slash capital. And this is a compromise which requires some additional safety measures as well. So, for example, the smart node doesn't let a mini pool get over 1 ETH. It automatically will start distributing it, and that's because if it got close to 8 ETH, then it could be potentially treated as slash capital instead of what it actually is, which is rewards. Why do we even need to worry about the difference between rewards and capital? Well, mainly just because rewards are distributed with a commission involved, and on the final withdrawal, the capital needs to be distributed proportionally without a commission. And if the node operator is slashed, then their bond is at risk first, so we need to handle those situations. Quick summary. So every validator has its own EVM contract to use as a withdrawal credential address. We're using the smart contract balance as sort of a inaccurate estimate of the state of the validator on the beacon chain, because we can't access that state at the moment. And it was done this way not because it's necessarily a great idea, but just because there's no other way to achieve that goal at the time. And it's an inefficient but necessary compromise. So I just mentioned that the validator balances and validator state isn't available to us on the EVM, and that's where EIP 4788 beacon block root in the EVM comes into play. So it's a proposal, an Ethereum improvement proposal by Alex Angzer, Danny Martin, my client, and the abstract up here: commit to the hash tree root of each beacon block in the corresponding execution payload header. Store each of these roots in a smart contract. So it's kind of pretty technically dense, but I'll just walk through what it does in a minute. And importantly, it's included in the Decentralised hard fork, which is on Hosky now, and mainnet in, well, it might actually be this month, April or March or April. So that was the abstract is very short and dense with information, so I'll just explain the problem and what it's there to solve. So currently the beacon state is a completely separate from the execution layer state. So the validators, statuses, balances and everything is totally in a separate silo to the execution layer where our smart contracts execute. That beacon state contains some information that we would like to have on the execution layer, such as the pub key, balance, status, etc. And there's presently no way natively to access that information on the beacon chain from the execution layer. Up until now, that is. The beacon state can be thought of as a giant data structure where each of the fields can either be additional objects or arrays, or you can think of it as a big tree. And if you take that tree, you can perform this process called localization on it, which results in just a single 32-byte hash representing the entire state. It obviously doesn't contain the entire state. It's just a cryptographic representation of that state, and that's what 4788 intends to put on the execution layer for us. So there's kind of two parts to this EIP. It's the first step is that they're extending the block headers to include parent beacon block. And then secondly, the more important side is that there's a contract deployed to the execution layer, which allows other contracts to call it and query the past 8,191 beacon block routes, which is approximately 1 day worth of history. Just as a technical implementation point, you might notice that it's the beacon block route or the beacon state route, and that's just a technical reason for that, but it essentially means the same thing. We can access the beacon state route just through another layer of the proof. So I just mentioned the proof, which is a cool feature of Merkle trees. You can essentially prove the existence of certain data within the tree by providing a short, succinct proof back to the root. So now that we are getting 4788, we have this way to give the EVM access to the data that's on the beacon chain, and it can be verified in this sort of roundabout asynchronous way. And so therefore we can trustlessly act on data from the beacon chain, which is previously accessible to us. So yeah, that was kind of a bit of a technical overview of that EIP. So why do we care about this for Rocket Pool? Well, we no longer have to rely on this suboptimal solution of a separate mini pool for every single validator. We can use state proofs to verify the actual validator balances and states instead of implying it based on the mini pool balance. And the entire process is trustless, so we don't have to rely on an oracle to perform that. So we don't need a separate withdrawal credentials to keep track of all their balances separately. And that's where Megapools come into play. So I just want to mention, first of all, that this is still in like a research level. There's no governance proposal or anything like that at this point in time. So some of these ideas are kind of high level, but they'll get fleshed out as we finish up with Houston and start working on our pips for further Saturn. So the high level idea of Megapools is that we replace the individual mini-pool contracts with a single per node operator smart contract, and all the validator withdrawal credentials will, for a single node operator, will point to this one contract. Instead of mini pool balances, we rely on state proofs to prove the state of the validator, and so it doesn't require any trusted oracle duties. It's fully trustless, and importantly, it's a significant gas reduction for distributions of multiple validators and a single contract deployment per node. So I'll just sort of walk through the idea now, which is all available in that research repository. So the first step is there's a setup. So node operators must deploy a Megapool contract, which is a one-time operation to set up the contract, and it will have a similar gas cost to a current mini pool deploy. And we can just make it automatically done as part of the first deposit. One very unfortunate thing is that current mini pools will not be able to migrate to this Megapool system. It will require a churn of validators to do so, because there's no method to change withdrawal credentials from an existing 0x01 withdrawal credential to a new one. The deposit process will be very similar to the current mini pool deposit process, except obviously we're not deploying a new contract every deposit. The node operator's deposit is just directed to the Megapool instead, and the Megapool will have its own internal FIFO queue of deposits, so it can handle multiple at once, and then that Megapool validator will enter the usual, or previously mini pool queue, but need a new name for that. And then once they're assigned funds, once they get to the front of the queue, then they will submit a state proof proving that their validator withdrawal credentials are pointing to the correct Megapool. So importantly here, that removes one of the ODAO duties, the scrub duty that I mentioned earlier. But it doesn't really reduce the time that we have currently with the scrub check, because it takes 8 or so hours for the deposit to appear in the state. So we're still going to have that waiting period. It's just not going to be a oracle duty anymore. So it's a trustless thing that's done by the node operator instead. So there's the same situation as we currently have, where the deposit hits the mini pool and then the node operator goes offline, or something's broken, and then the funds can't just sit there forever. So we'll have a similar process for dissolution as well. And that dissolution just sends the ETH back to the deposit pool to be assigned to another node operator. To avoid relying on the ODAO for this, we could incentivize it so that other node operators can perform this action if the original owning node operator doesn't respond in a timely fashion. To exit a validator, it's pretty similar again to start with. So the node operator will submit a voluntary exit message on the beacon chain. The smart node will then monitor blocks for rocket pool validator voluntary exits. And if it detects a voluntary exit of one of its own validators, then it again submits another stake proof proving that the withdrawal exists in a recent block. So if after some amount of time, which is not strictly defined at this point, but after some amount of time, if the node operator who owns that validator doesn't submit that stake proof, then another node operator will be able to submit it, and they'll be incentivized to do so after some period. Once a valid stake proof is submitted to the Megapool, the Megapool enters into this special withdrawing state, which I'll explain in a second. But first of all, I'll go over the withdrawing capital after you've exited. So once a validator has fully exited, there's going to be a corresponding withdrawal entry in the execution payload of a recent block. So again, with another stake proof, it's a common theme here, lots of stake proofs. We can provide the Megapool with the exact withdrawal balance of the validator, and then we can perform the slashing if required, or the proportional distribution of capital if required, while it's in that withdrawing state. Once all of the validators as a part of that Megapool exits this withdrawing state, then the Megapool exits that withdrawing state. So while Megapool is in this special withdrawing state, you can no longer distribute rewards. So we're just waiting for the exit to happen and the capital to be returned to the smart contract at that point. The distribution of rewards, this is the most simple part of it. So this is the biggest improvement that Megapools sort of bring. So as long as the Megapool isn't in this special withdrawing state where it's awaiting the capital to be returned from the beacon chain, you can just call distribute at any point, and the entire balance of the Megapool is treated as rewards. So all consensus layer rewards and execution layer for all the validators under a node can be sent to this one address, and that removes the need for the current distributor that we have at the moment, which distributes MEV. Of course, if you're opted into the smoothing pool, that's not true, but in the other case it is. And then all rewards, so consensus layer rewards, MEV rewards, everything, all comes to this one contract. It's distributed by a single call. And it would be a relatively cheap call to distribute all your rewards across all your validators. So it's a massive improvement. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's just a diagram out of the research doc. Just shows the process. There's a couple of sort of internal steps there. One of the things I want to point out is it kind of introduced this new watcher role for node operators. So as I mentioned, there's some situations where a node operator doesn't respond with a stake proof in time, and we need to incentivize another group of people to submit it if they fail to do so. So the proposal doesn't go deeply into the mechanics of that. Still things we need to iron out, but there's obviously two ways that we can incentivize it. So the benefits from doing this, I think I mentioned it a few times, but it massively reduces the gas required to distribute multiple validators from the same node operator. It removes another ODAO duty, which we love doing. We want to get rid of all of them soon. So that gets rid of the scrub checking duty, replaces it with the stake proofs. As distribution is so much easier now, you don't have to call 100 contracts if you have 100 validators, then we can hopefully get node operators doing it more often. And because if you have a small amount of rewards across a number of validators and it costs a certain amount of gas to call each distribute function, then you're going to wait until the balance gets to a level where it makes sense. But if all of the rewards come into the same contract, then you're more likely to call it because it's not giving away so much in gas. And what that will do is hopefully unlock some of the unproductive ETH and send it back to the deposit pool to become productive again. Not that we have a problem with deposit pool size at the moment, but still it's nice to think about. And this last point is an interesting one. So if we have all of the state for all of the validators in a single contract, it makes it easier for us to look into things like cross-collateralization of mini pools, not mini pools anymore. So currently each mini pool is kind of its own little silo of capital, and we're kind of limited to slashing per silo, whereas if we put them all together, there's potential that we could reduce the bond as it's spread across the bond of multiple validators instead of just individual ones. So how does that translate to scaling? Said that Megapools are going to help us scale. Well, less friction for node operators, obviously an increased return for node operators. If you're not wasting all that money on gas, then obviously your return on investment is higher. And again, with that cross-collateralization of bonds, we could look at lowering the bond even further. And I think Megapools also work really well with some of the other proposals that are coming out at the moment, such as the ones in the Rapid Research Incubator. So I think there's a lot of continuity between this idea and some of the ideas that are out there now. So challenges at the moment are mostly technical in nature. So the usual things such as actually implementing it. I do have a proof of concept, but it's very basic. There's obviously a lot of work to be done. Before we even do that, obviously we need to fully spec it out. And then, implementation testing, security audits, all that sort of stuff. I mentioned that I kind of glossed over the incentivization system for the watches. So that's something that needs to be fleshed out a bit as well. And this one is interesting. So the way Merkle proofs work, they're kind of linked to the structure. The verification process is linked to the structure of the object, of the tree. So any changes, well, not any changes, but some changes to the beacon state could actually invalidate the verification system. So that means we can't ossify the process. We need to be able to change it as Ethereum adapts over time. So in every hard fork so far, except for Dankun, they made changes to the beacon state. So it's not an uncommon thing for them to do. So that's just something we have to be aware of. And then you've probably seen Merkle trees on the Ethereum roadmap. They're something that's probably coming in the future, but that would invalidate us as well. We'd have to redesign around it. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get rid of upgrading anytime soon, I don't think, but work with that. And I mentioned that there's no migration path possible, which is kind of a bummer for a lot of people. I don't really see a path forward there at the moment unless something comes out of the woodwork. So when Megapools then? As I mentioned, it requires 4788, and that's in Dankun, which we know is imminent. We're wrapping up development on Houston at the moment. So final stages of audits and whatnot. Maybe we'll talk more about that shortly. So we just need feedback on the research and design, finalize some of those hand wavy parts like the incentivization, produce a formal specification and RPIP, go through the governance process, and then implementation, auditing, and testing. And then hopefully that I'd like to see that potentially get into the second upgrade, which is the one following Houston. Okay, that's me. I went a little bit quicker through that than I thought.
Okay, so we're going to take some questions, and I'm going to walk around the room with the two mics. Yeah, speaking the phone, so phone can stream. Okay. We're going to go to Ramana first.
Thanks. I have a lot of questions, but so I'll just ask them all, and you can. Okay, I'll just ask them all, and then you can answer the ones you want to. With the existing mini pools, if you end up with 8 ETH or more worth of rewards, what happens? With that smart contract that has the beacon state roots, how is that like a precompile, or like is that updated with gassy transactions, or how does that work? Is there any reason to make the watchers operators as watchers, but why not just let anyone be them? And will migration to megapools be mandatory, or are you imagining a state where we have a mix of mini pools and megapools?
Okay. So question 1 was
8 ETH rewards in existing mini pools.
So if that happens, the 8 ETH is treated as flash capital. So you will be.
So you could break it.
Yeah, it would be treated as if you were slashed down to 8 ETH. Yeah, so that's why we have the smart node monitoring for the balance of the mini pool, so it doesn't get over 1 ETH.
Next one was about the beacon state contract.
Yeah, that's a good one. So they're actually kind of doing it slightly different to previous approaches. There's this special contract that's deployed at this address on the EVM, and then prior to the execution of transactions in that block, part of the specification for the Ethereum execution layer is that they have to call this function on this contract, which is...
So it's kind of like a precompile.
It's kind of like one, but it's actually at an address. It's not... Well, it's precompiles are as well, but they normally start at 0, whereas this is, just an address.
Watchers could be anyone?
Yeah, so there's no reason that it has to be node operators. It just makes sense because they're already running the smart node stack. If someone wanted to run the smart node stack without running Rocket Pool, then there's no specific reason why I said that it was limited to node operators.
Yeah, mini pools and mega pools at the same time?
Yes. So, I mean, it's up for discussion, obviously, but we obviously already have thousands of mini pools, and so we can't just force everyone out and tell them to come back in. Also, it's really a benefit of their own, so it's kind of the node operators' choice whether they want to upgrade, but that's for existing mini pools. But I think once they're deployed, no one will be upgrading mini pools because there's no real benefit to create mini pools after the introduction of mega pools. Yeah.
Okay, next question from the audience. Let's go up here.
I also have a few questions, but I wasn't smart enough to write them down. So I'll try and remember. Thank you for talking. How is this going to be changed with if EIP 7251, which I believe is increasing the max effective balance? Is it really just doing what that is earlier?
So we'll need to make changes in response to that, but there's no specific hurdles that I can think of that will start us being able to sort of adopt that.
Okay, similar to that, would rewards compound, or would be basically the same thing, where we'd sit on until you get enough for 8 and then do another one?
It's similar to how it is now. The rewards will get spimmed off the beacon chain into the Megapool contract, and they're not automatically compounding there, but you have to distribute them out and deploy other people. It's not like an automated compounding system.
Okay, and the last question is,
let's say you're running 100 validators and you needed to, in order to go into the Megapool, you said you'd have to exit and then restart a new one. Have you looked at, for a given gas price, how long it would take to break even on the saving of costs, assuming that you're doing Rocket Sweep, which I use to...
Right, no, I haven't done any looking at that because it does kind of depend on some of the implementation factors. So how much the distribute actually costs and how much the deploy actually costs without it being developed. I don't know what those numbers are at this point in time, but it's something that we can certainly do once we get a bit further advanced.
Thank you. Okay, next in the audience. Sneaking anyone online? No? Good? You good? Okay. Dean, thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you everyone.